Hello, this is Harry Paden. I am the host of the Paden Perspective. This is season 2, episode 1. Season 1 is available on YouTube. I started it and was able to record quite a few episodes. So if you want to see any of those, go to the Paden Perspective on YouTube, and you can, look at those episodes. I think some of them they cover a variety of subjects, and hopefully some are relevant to you. Today, as I begin season 2, let me do it the right way, as they do in big time camera and TV. Let me just first start, of course, by thanking God, who is the author and finisher of all of our faiths. Without Him, I am nothing, we are nothing. So thank you, God, for the many blessings you bestow upon me and my family. I certainly know I'm not worthy, but thank you just the same for being the God that you are. Again, as I mentioned, my name is Harry Paden, and I am the host of the Paden Perspective. And one thing about me is I love to talk. I have a lot of ideas. I spend a lot of time in educating myself. And I'm going to give you a little background of myself. Just before I do that, let me get it off my mind while it's on my mind, and begin with the words of a great poet. We learned about this poet when most of us were in school, probably elementary, junior high school, as early as those times. Great poems. I love poems. I even can write poetry. I haven't did it a lot of. But let me read. Robert Frost, the renowned poet Robert Frost, has a poem entitled "Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening." I'm not going to read the whole poem because it's a good-sized poem, not that long, but just a certain part that I want to bring for this podcast. And it's the last part which ends the poem. And what it says is that the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. And the reason I read that is because it relates to the journey that I am in life. Let me give you a little background because some may not know me, some that know me may not know me. I was born in Harlem, a great, great Harlem, home of the Harlem Renaissance and so many other great Harlem icons and many great entertainers. I was born there, 117th Street. At around the my fourth grade, my family moved to the great city of Newark, New Jersey. And we moved to a couple of apartments and finally ended up in the Scudder Home projects on Mercer Street. Quite an interesting venture there. I learned a lot when we lived in the projects, and I'll speak more about that throughout the podcast. Maybe not today, but at some point. It's ingrained in me, the projects. I'm proud of it because it helped make me who I am. I went to school in Newark. The typical Quitman I went to. Before I went to Quitman, I went to 18th Avenue. Then I went to Webster Junior High School. Now I think it's called Barringer Prep. But my really formative, who really made me the man that I am started in high school. And I went to a great Central High School, Blue Devils. Uh, I was fortunate. I loved education and, did quite well education-wise. I was a top student, student leader, wrote for the newspaper, a lot of different things. I was a very involved student. Now, I graduated in 1971. I was the third top student in my graduating class, even made a speech and everything. After graduation, I was pumped, as some say, to go on to college. And I went to the prestigious American University in Washington, D.C. by way of Princeton University in Princeton, New Jersey, two of the nation's most prestigious schools of higher learning. I was fortunate I got to attend and stay in dormitories on both of those campuses. My personal background, I'm a parent of 6 children. I have 24 grandchildren at last count, and 8 great-grandchildren, and thousands of other surrogate children that I just love, and I kind of take them all in and tell them what I think they should do, give them advice, and some of us are just those types that every kid we treat as our kids. I have a lot of kids that call me daddy that I'm not their biological daddy, and that's kids that I just run into. I am the CEO of HP INC. That's all caps. HP, Harry Paden, INC. And it stands for HP Inc. Not HP, I'm sorry, messed it up. It's HP INC. That's the company's name. It's not HP Inc. HP Inc. is Hewlett Packard. Right now, their website, if you did just HP with small letters, INC, you'll get their website. So if you want to get my website, Google Harry Paden. But Hewlett Packard, I'm coming after you. And one day when they Google HP INC, my name is going to come up first. I'm just putting it out there. I'm retired as a HUD supervisor of inspections, happily retired. I'm a world traveler. When I was at Central High School, I was fortunate enough where, because of my education pursuits, I won an all-expense trip to Europe and the Soviet Union over July and August. We traveled through Europe, London, Sweden, Czechoslovakia, Denmark. I'm going to forget some of them, but quite a few of those European countries. And then in the month of August, for one whole month, I stayed in what was then called the Soviet Union. Now they simply call the whole country Russia. So that was my background. But the reason I quoted the miles to go before I sleep is because now I am proud to announce another accomplishment. Miles to go before I sleep. When I'm sitting back watching, game shows, I authored a book. I am an author. I'm left out that I've written columns since high school. I've probably written a couple of thousand or more columns for newspapers, magazines. I love writing columns, but I had never written a book. This is my first book. The book is entitled A Living Testimony: How to Raise America's Nightmare. What's that nightmare? Educated children of color. I know I tried to get cute, so let me say it again. A living testimony: how to raise America's nightmare. Educated children of color. That's my book. The cover was designed by my grandson. It has a picture at the top of me and my mother together. She helped educate me, was my first teacher. I passed my education down to my daughter, Shahara, and Shahara was involved in the lives of 4 children that she raised and is raising, and they went to college. So it's kind of a flow chart from my mother to me, to my daughter, now to my grandchildren, her children, and you see how it goes. It flows down. College education becomes something that's expected, something that's a norm for my family. And again, I have other grandchildren also doing great things, my children doing great things, and I'm proud of all of them. Now, this book, I'll just give you a few snippets because today basically is I am announcing the book. That's what this episode is going to be about. Tell you some of the people I like to dedicate this book, or I did dedicate this book to. It's dedicated to my biological daughter, Shahara, and her children, my grandchildren, Quantasia, Colleen, Nasir, and Sanaya Naomi. They're all pictured in the front of this cover. Shahara is not only for life, forever and ever. She will be Daddy's little girl forever and a day. She is my best friend. My daughter is now my best friend. And I'm extremely proud of the woman that she has become and how well she's raising and educating my grandchildren. My grandchildren, they mean so much to me. And as I said, I have 24 of them, and their parents are doing such a great job. So also, I dedicate this book to my foster daughter, my daughter's older sister, they call her half-sister. I'm not Miranda's biological father, but I am her dad. I am her father. I helped in parenting such a wise woman as Miranda and her children. And by way of marriage, I adopted 4 children of my wife who don't belong to me. They were a package deal, and we kind of became the 2 children I had. I was raising them as a single dad at the time, and my person who became my wife, her 4 children. So we were like the Black Brady Bunch. And that's part of the reason I'm able to write this book, because I was not only a biological parent, I was a foster parent through the New Jersey system. They paid me money because I was raising her and she wasn't my child. And that's the call to foster child. Just those labels means nothing. And my adopted children, they did not have my last name when me and my wife got married, but I adopted them officially, and they have my last name, and their children have my last name. And saying all that to say, though there are those titles, they treat me as their father, and I treat them as my children. I'd like to also acknowledge the memory of my dear mother, Naomi F. Paden. She taught me so much, and it's really the values that she taught me, good things, because again, I was raised in an environment in the projects where it was dog eat dog. A lot of stuff went on. Some people didn't make it out of that project. They got killed, hurt, maimed, paralyzed. And my mother she was a hellfighter, and she taught us things. When other kids were doing things, she made sure we didn't do it. Didn't understand it then, but I thank my mother, and this book is definitely dedicated to her, because if anyone knows about parenting, it was my mother. And finally, I give thanks to my father, the late James Paden Sr., for teaching me how to be a man. So this is a book. I'm very excited about my book. I'm very excited. Now, before I go just a little further, there are a couple other people that I want to just thank, because this wasn't just something that I did all on my own. I'd like to thank my spiritual advisor, my pastor, Reverend Cornelius Wesley Martin. He's the senior pastor of Unity Freedom Baptist Church, 739 South 20th Street, Newark, New Jersey. After pandemic, please come by. You will enjoy it. I've been there for more than 30 years. I'm a Baptist deacon there. As a matter of fact, today I celebrate 34 years as a deacon at Unity Freedom Baptist Church. I'm very proud of that. Along with Reverend Martin, I have another spiritual person that I'd like to thank, and that's Minister Dr. Kyra Buford. She has the gift of prophecy. As I presented the idea of my book to her, she told me some of the great things that she prophesies is going to happen as a result of me writing this book. I'm going to keep those things locked in my heart, and when they come true, then I'll let you know, because they will come true. She is a person who is anointed with the gift of prophecy, and her prophecies have come true. So she's no joke. She's not a name prophet. She is a prophet and an anointed minister. And you could also see her along with the great Reverend Martin at Unity Freedom after COVID. Need to see you guys there. Okay, and finally, my friend, the CEO of Irvington, the Honorable Tony Voss. I can't talk about him now because he does so much and did so much for me. He's my friend, but he's also my mayor. Thank you, Mayor Voss. Thank you, Mayor Voss. Thank you, Mayor Voss. And the final person is just persons, I'm sorry. My many teachers, my mentors, my coaches, so many people that, just saw something in me and touched my life, through my life, to make sure that I didn't become a statistic that is throughout this book. Many of the statistics, and the reason that I wrote this book was because of many of those statistics, and 50% of Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans drop out of high school. Although blacks are only 12% of the U.S. population, they are an estimated 44% of the U.S. prison population. Black American males are killed at a higher rate per population than any other race of males in the industry. Let me read that again to you. Black American males are killed at a higher rate per population than any other race of males in the industrialized world. I have where I get that information from. I didn't just make it up. It is backed up in the book. There, but for the grace of God and the people I mentioned, go I. So this book, I'm really happy about it, and I can't stop smiling because I've written columns since I was in high school, newspaper columns. I was editor of the Tangent newspaper at Central High School. I wrote some real fiery stuff about, the Black Panthers and all. I almost got kicked out of school, but they couldn't kick me out of school because I was a straight A kid. So I was able to express my opinion, and there was some insinuatory. In other words, some of the stuff I said really got people mad, and I think I wrote it that way. But I've been writing since high school. I've written for several, and most of the local newspapers around town. I've written magazine articles, but I had never written a book. I don't even think I ever thought about writing a book. And again, I've been writing and love writing since high school, so I certainly probably could have written a book, but I now have a book. The cover of this book was designed by my grandson, Nasir. He's also pictured on here, and it's kind of a flow chart. The top picture shows my mother and me. Don't have many pictures of my mother. She didn't like taking pictures. But I was going to an awards program, and we were dressed so cute together, and I cherish that picture, and that's her. She was my first teacher. She made me know that education was important, and of course, me being a mama's boy, I listened to my mother, and I loved education, and who I am is because of my mother. She educated me. So the flow chart flowed from my mother, who only went to the 8th grade. You know how it was back then. So she gave me the education values. I utilized them. I gave you some of the great things that I was able to do education-wise. I passed that on to my daughter, Shahara, my other daughters, But in the picture is my daughter, Shahara. She's the second picture underneath ours. And underneath her picture is four other pictures of four children that she directed. They lived in her house. Two of them are her biological, and two of them are children that, through relationship, she took. You know how we do. We raise kids. All that step and all that stuff doesn't matter. You're my child. And all four of those are educated children. So the flow chart goes from my mother to me, to my daughter, to her children, my grandchildren, and that book is going to go down. And if I was to include my five other children and my other grandchildren, it wouldn't be a book big enough because we doing our thing in education, and I love them for that. So this book is really just written to help parents navigate the urban. I know there's people out there who know a lot about suburban. I don't know about suburban schools. I went to school in Newark, so we call those urban schools. And as intelligent as I was a top student. I was a bad guy. You couldn't tell me I wasn't. You couldn't, because again I was smart. I traveled over the world. I went on a plane and everything, and people paid money for me to go somewhere. That's how smart I was. And I graduated number 3. Probably could have graduated number 1 if I wasn't so bad and mischievous and got in trouble all the time. But that was because I didn't have, the work wasn't as challenging. But that's all right. That's an excuse. It was my fault I wasn't number 1. Let me stop being silly, because I won't be able to stop laughing. But when I went to American University by way of Princeton, by that I went to Princeton for some summer classes. The summer classes at Princeton, they changed my life because they taught me Black history. They taught me that aside from some of the stuff that they wrote in their books, that we were just slaves, and that we were not whole citizens, and the stuff that they taught us. And then when they finally had to take us off slavery, and now they're teaching us that, now they say, this is their favorite saying, they being, people who did enslave people. I'm not talking about any one particular race, because some of my greatest mentors happen to be Caucasian, so there's nothing racial, it's people. Some of those people, their favorite saying is, that happened a long time ago, you need to forget it. But the reason we can't forget it is because of the education system. So the book has quite a bit of my heart into it. I speak about slavery, how it demoralized us, how it put us education eons behind some other people, most who are living in the suburbs, psychologically damaged us. So this book, because of my experience in the urban system, I want parents to know you have to give your children education. Don't depend on just any school to educate your children. And there's some fine urban institutions. But parent, that doesn't mean I have a bibliography. You have to do your part. This bibliography lists some of the finest books, some of the books that helped me. Just note, it also has something by Newark Mayor Ras Baraka, John Hendrick Clark, James Comer, Alan Poussant, some of the greatest black doctors on black child care. I use information from these great men, Jawanza Kunjufu, Carter G. Woodson. So if you do nothing else but read this little humble book, if you get anything out of it, that's good. But if not, you go into the bibliography. These great men, great black men, you certainly will be able to help your children. The book is broken down into different chapters because, again, from raising children, I know children go through phases. So the important part are the 4 chapters. There's other parts, but I'll highlight the 4 chapters and I'll end. Chapter 1 covers from 0 through 4. When I say from 0, you have to teach your children when they're in the womb. You start then. That's how you teach, and it's covered in the book. Through 4, which deals with preschool, and my recommendation that you should educate your children through preschool, or some family member that will educate. Don't just have them babysit them and have them watching stories and stuff. Then chapter 2 goes from age 5 through age 12. Pretty nice little, yes, my daughter used to say, yes, Daddy, I'll go to school and I'll get good grades and everything. Life was great. I love that period. She was such a good student. Then chapter 3, ages 13 through 18. Now, if you haven't went through that, that's the teenage years. And when I tell you, boy, you better put on your seatbelt and buckle down, because there's going to be some challenges if you have normal teenagers. So I'll write about that. And then chapter 4, of course, raising boys into men. So those are the 4 chapters. The book is pretty short. I didn't want to write, one of those big, thick books where you got to take days and days. It's only 82 pages. And I put it in big print because many of us eyesight is starting to fade. So it's not that hard to read. I encourage you, it's available on Amazon, A Living Testimony, How to Raise America's Nightmare, Educated Children of Color. I really hope you get it, but I hope you get it because you use it. If you don't use it, pass it to some young person. I think it's worthy. I do. I really do. I humbly say that. I'm a great writer, and I think that I did enough research, because research is my thing, that this book will help somebody. So, thank you for listening, because I am a living testimony. I survived Harlem. I survived the Scudder Home projects. I survived suburban schools where these kids were way up here, way smart. And I had traveled the world. Remember, I traveled the world in high school. When I went to that school, man, those kids were sitting there and they were like, we didn't cover that. To myself, I don't feel like an idiot. But all things are good. You do, when you are a person that was taught the things I taught, I survived and I was able to come through. So I'm a living testimony on how to raise America's nightmare, educated children of color. I have a great track record, just so you know. Again, my 6 children are all successful, college educated. Their children are bad. I got, grandchildren 4.8, grandchildren that's seniors in college, grandchildren that are raising, their level of education, wanting to be scientists. The cover was done by my grandson. Hopefully I didn't say it already, but my grandson, he's in college for, I think it's called New Media Arts. I like to call it graphic design, where they, manipulate stuff, the games and stuff, where that's a money-making career, and that young man is headed to some good things. So as I am, I hope that I continue to bring you some great episodes of the Paden perspective. Get the name Paden. I'm Paden, and it's going to be my perspective. You may not agree, but the one thing one of my college professors told me that I always remember, and I really thanked him for that, he said, Paden, I've been at this for, I think he said 20 years. He said, your research is superior to anyone that I've ever taught. Now I don't know, if he just fluffing me or what. But he's probably telling the truth, because I had to write columns, and it took research, because the worst thing in the world is to have somebody say, you're wrong, and I didn't like that. So my columns were sharp, the book is sharp, and I hope that you will again go out and get it, and I love the color. It's available on Amazon. You can go to my website. My website is www.hpinc-consultant.com. One more time, www.hpinc-consultant.com. My company that I'm CEO of is in all caps, HPINC, not HP Inc. That's Hewlett Packard. For now, mine is HPINC, all caps. Thank you. To God be the glory. May your best life be the rest of your life. Talk to me.